Welcome to the 11th Annual Arizona Insect Festival. My name is Wendy Moore, and I'm a faculty member in the University of Arizona's Department of Entomology. This year, we are honored to dedicate the entire festival to the memory of our friend and colleague, Dr. Justin Schmidt. We selected the tarantula hawk as this year's theme insect since it ranks among the highest in the Sting of King's famous insect pain scale. And we are offering this special symposium in honor of Justin's work, spirit, and incredible ability to communicate the amazing world of stinging arthropods to a wide audience. This afternoon, we are going to hear firsthand from 5 of Justin's friends and colleagues as they honor Justin and the natural history of arthropods we all love so much. Before we hear from them, we wanted to share this tribute by Coyote Peterson, who was the last to capture Justin and his boundless enthusiasm for arthropods on film.
I'm Justin Schmidt, and I'm the architect of the Insect Sting Pain Index.
Just 5 months ago, I sat in a room with world-renowned entomologist Justin Schmidt, talking about insect stings and the crazy road we have both traveled down to bring everyone education and entertainment about some of the world's creepiest creatures. And it's here today that I sit with a heavy heart to announce that my friend, mentor, and the Yoda of Sting, Justin Schmidt, passed away February 18th, 2023. And the video we're going to bring you today is, to our knowledge, the last interview that he did on camera. I filmed this with Justin in September of 2022 after sticking my feet into a mound of harvester ants. At the time, I did not even know that he was sick. He was upbeat, he was excited, and he was thrilled to talk about the world of insects. To you, my friend Justin, wherever you are in the afterlife, chasing all sorts of bugs with nets and hopefully not getting stung too much, I hope that you are smiling down on all of us now, knowing you inspired an entire generation and many more to come with your love for insects. Justin, on behalf of myself, everyone who loves animals, and specifically the world of entomology, thank you for all of the inspiration that you brought us as the Yoda of Sting.
Next, I would like to introduce Molly Hunter, also a faculty member in the Department of Entomology, and also the chair of the interdisciplinary graduate program in entomology and insect science. Molly's going to say a few words about Justin and also introduce our first speaker.
If you've ever had the good fortune to be with a naturalist out in nature and they help you see what they see, it's a richer, less human-centered world out there that we are privileged to be in. So there's never been a more important time for voices who are forces of nature. And today our speakers are naturalists and friends of Justin who are speaking to this tradition. So today we're lucky to have our first speaker is Dr. Billy Krimmel. He got his PhD in ecology at UC Davis, studying plant-insect interactions. And then for a very short time, he was a postdoc in my laboratory. That was terrific. Before he moved to start a native landscape architecture and construction company in Sacramento, California. So he's traveled to Tucson to join us today in tribute to his friend and mentor, Justin Schmidt.
Well, I've known Justin and Lee for probably a little over 20 years. I met them because my mom, who's here, was taught their sons in elementary school. And so we became friends through that before I was and even knew that entomology was a career path. And in sophomore year in college, after I was always into like chasing bugs and kind of looking at them and observing them. Growing up in Tucson, it's hard not to be. But in college, I got invited to go on a trip to Costa Rica, and I'd always really loved like reading about insects in the jungle and stuff like that, but never had the chance to actually see them firsthand. And so, being that I had this, friend Justin, who was an entomologist, I didn't really know how big of a deal he was at this point. Just kind of the only entomologist I knew. Him and Lee invited me to their house, and Justin helped me kind of put together like a starting pack for observing insects in nature. It's a little bit of an upgrade from, me using like a yogurt cup to fight the ants at our house outside of Tucson. But so this is before Justin and Lee moved out to the desert. So they lived in town. And while the home in the desert, they were surrounded by all these arthropods in their natural environments. Their home in Tucson, I wish I had pictures. I couldn't find any good actual firsthand pictures, but And I know time does weird things with memory, but my memory is of the living room, all of the walls being covered from floor to ceiling in jars of vinegaroons. So those of you, I think most of this audience probably knows what vinegaroons are, whip scorpions. You find them in your house sometimes. This is a photograph from a paper that Lee and Justin published just last year. And so instead of stinging, they spray, and they spray a mixture of chemicals that can be fatal to insects, but not to humans, like the ones that Justin is famous for being stung by. But so during this visit, Justin kind of gave me if you had to have one little satchel of entomology supplies, what would it be? So of course the aspirator, way to go, and it's like a little tube. You can suck an insect into a vial. Those of you who have used these with insects that sting, when they're aggravated, they tend to release their venoms. So you often get like a lung full of kind of unpleasant fumes. And then, pro tip, especially back when cameras were more common and actual film was used, you can go to a camera store and get a bunch of their old film canisters for free, which make really good vials for putting the insects in. And then, of course, a macro lens, which is how photographs like this are taken to capture little tiny things and blow them up big. And so with my little starter kit, I was able to go and make some really fun observations, get some good photographs, collect some insects to show my friends. And then with new excitement back to campus, shortly thereafter connected with an entomologist advisor, kind of realized that entomology was in fact a career path and not just a thing that kids do when they play with bugs. And then years later was able to return to a different part of Costa Rica that has I think the highest density of stinging insects in the northern part. And got the pleasure of interacting with wasps that preeminently attack you because they're used to being attacked by capuchin monkeys. So they smell you, and next thing you know, you have a wasp beard that's stinging you. I left that trip, unfortunately, with a sort of systemic allergy to wasps and ant stings. And it made me realize how fortunate Justin was with all of the stings to never develop a serious systemic, not that I heard of. I never saw him carrying an EpiPen around. When we had killer bees in our house, he came, I don't even think he wore a bee suit. And he removed the colony from our backyard, and yeah. No, I just get my lymph nodes swell and I get kind of feverish. It's nothing fatal, but it's not pleasant. So then I was fortunate then to study plants and insects in undergrad and then get a PhD at Davis. And then the whole time as I was taking these classes, Justin's name would come up, and I felt really proud to kind of have this personal relationship with someone that I was realizing was actually really widely known and appreciated. And as I started going to conferences and giving talks on my research, Justin would always be in the audience and asking questions. So my research was on sticky plants. So sticky plants are really common in hot areas like Tucson. We have a lot of them here. And whoops. There you go. And they're characterized as plants that have they're called glandular trichomes. They're just these little balls of oil at the tip of plant hairs. And when an insect contacts it, they pop. They make odors, even ones that aren't very sticky, like a lavender. When you rub it, that's that mechanism. And then a lot of little insects like these white flies here and this little fly here, they might land just to take a break and stretch out a little bit, but they never leave because they get stuck to the plant. So we're calling that carrion. I know we don't often think of dead insects as carrion, but we're going to refer to that as carrion. And then we have these specialist insects that live on these sticky plants, and they take advantage of the fact that there's this ample protein supply that's just waiting there for them to eat. Oh, and these specialist insects here, these are some of the common ones. This is a stilt bug, long legs, stilt bug. This is a mirid bug, and my company's name, Miridae, is after this bug. And they have adaptations like hooks in their feet or grease that they excrete on their underside that prevent them from getting stuck up to the plant. Scavenging is ubiquitous. Even the caterpillars scavenge. Everything on this plant, with the exception of the aphid, is eating meat to some extent. And that means that, it's not like your typical plant herbivore predator system. It's really the trophic lines are blurred. Everyone eats everyone else. And it's really all because of this carrion that's abundant. So this shows an assassin bug here that's scavenging on one of these little dead flies. And then later on, it's killing this caterpillar that otherwise could sterilize the plant. So the plant's attracting and supporting this little fleet of bodyguards just by capturing these little dead insects. And especially like this assassin bug is grown and it's a formidable predator. But when they're babies, they need to eat meat, but they can't exactly go catch like a caterpillar that's 20 times their size. They'll probably just get eaten by it. And so we did this experiment that I like to think that like a 6-year-old could have done. This is for my PhD, where we went and we got some dead fruit flies from the genetics lab down the hallway in the building. And we just put them on a bunch of plants. And then we compared how many predatory insects and caterpillar damage and all that were on those plants versus ones that we didn't do that to, and found a very, very significant impact of the more dead flies, the more predators, the less caterpillar damage, the more fruits that the plant produced. And, you know, Justin did something that I think came to admire more and more in my career, which was he had these, you know, research, peer-reviewed research that was there to advance the field, you know, that's what academics do. But he had this, and I think when I talked to him about it, he didn't even realize how big his stinging index was going to be when he first started doing it, you know? And so he also did this, you know, had this whole body of work that connected to people outside of academia. And, you know, it's just brilliant. Like everyone's either been stung by something or knows someone who's been stung by something or was afraid of getting stung by a bee at some point. So it just, everyone can relate to that. And then it just kind of introduces you to like what Justin did, which is the chemistry of it, the evolution of it. And you start to think like, why do they have these stings? Why does it feel like this? And the next time you know, and all of a sudden you're kind of looking at the world through a new set of eyes. And I think that's something that Justin did really beautifully. And that then through my research that again, I kind of felt like a 6-year-old could do and observe, there were no microscopes required. I decided to try to bring this to people, tell these untold stories through the medium of gardening. And so about 8 years ago, I started a landscape, yes. Oh yeah, that's a good question. This is the red-humped redback caterpillar, I believe it's called, and it eats redbud and other plants. So it's, you know, the idea that it's okay if your native plant gets eaten because it's kind of all part of the. I don't think so. Yeah, and it might be, honestly, I probably should have looked at it before showing the slide. Someone else I'm sure can answer that question. But so we have a design, build, landscaping business. That's our main business. We do native plants. We use it as an opportunity to get people excited about a native landscape because it's not just decoration. You get all these species interactions that you can be put in the context of coevolution, which is really what, to me, makes them fascinating. We have a pop-up mobile nursery in the Sacramento area. There really wasn't like a retail access to native plants until recently. And then we have a nonprofit that uses native gardens as an opportunity for STEM education and for research. And so at its basic, the design, build, landscaping, you make a pretty landscape, but you put native plants in. It's not rocket science, but a lot of folks, they just want a pretty landscape, and it's an opportunity to create habitat in a built environment that really needs it. But then I think also, like, again, all these stories, you're out in your backyard with some friends having a drink, and it's not just look at that pretty rose. It's like, look at this whole cascading effect of this evolutionary relationship that's happening in my backyard. But it has to look nice and it has to work, and it can't be a total mess. And then we collaborate with artists too, and we do a lot of stuff with like advocating for native seed and the importance of native seed in the built environment. So this is an art piece where we have these kind of underappreciated native plants and the root systems, which are super important for carbon sequestration and water infiltration, but are invisible. They're actually, their shape is CNC routed into wood, which is filled with the actual seed from the plant, and then resined in there so that, when this building falls down 100 years later, this little seed bank will pop up. And we'll have some time for questions at the end. That's their beer tap at the bar where it was installed. Yeah, and we'll have some time for questions at the end here. Yeah, and so then we also have this pop-up mobile nursery. So we bought this delivery truck and actually ourselves kind of surgically modified it so that it can be a fold-out pop-up nursery. We get homeowners to invite their neighbors, and then we sell them native plants, and we give them kind of custom tailored advice for what to put in their own garden. We'll often bring out insects and microscope and stuff like that, and sometimes turn it into a little event It's good for school gardens too, where people can actually go in real time and buy plants to plant in the school garden. And then I'll just briefly talk about our kind of main project right now with our nonprofit called the Seed Pile Project, trying to get people to kind of look at the built environment through fresh eyes and appreciate that some of these seedlings that are coming up in the cracks and crevices are actually really important plants. So we just hand people a packet of seeds and then a little guide of how to identify the seedlings that come up. They put them on the ground and then they tell us what they see. And then we share that data with other researchers who might want to study other things like urban heat extremes with those species of plants in the built environment. And I'm just so grateful to have Justin as a mentor. And again, someone that did this basic research, but also prioritized like connecting directly with the public. It's rare in the world.
When are you coming to Tucson?
It's been great to be back. It's been too long. Oh. Yes. No. Oh.
Maybe I'll use the microphone since I'm right here. So Billy, what part of your business is the most effective at reaching other people as citizen scientists?
Yeah, and the mobile nursery's been really fun like that. And we actually launched it during COVID when people were kind of afraid to go to a nursery, and but there's still like lines out the back of Home Depot and people were buying Home Depot plants instead of native plants. And that's been really good. I think the model of people hosting, and my wife's a community organizer, so we kind of take like a community organizing approach where we give them templates for social media and for flyers to publicize the plant sale. And then it kind of engages that unit. And I think like the neighborhood scale is really fascinating for like restoration through native landscaping. Thank you.
So much. Okay, so one request, we have another audience on Zoom. And so they're not here to hear questions without microphones. So it would be helpful to just hold your questions till the end. And we'll bring a microphone so everyone on Zoom can hear the questions and the answers too. So now it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Leslie Boyer. She grew up here in Tucson. She was turning over rocks on her grandparents' homestead and feeding bugs to the funnel web spider on her grandmother's kitchen windowsill. She graduated from the U of A in 1981 and got an MD at Harvard in 1985 and specialized first in pediatrics and then toxicology and then toxinology. And that's the medical science of natural toxins. She's been named a local legend of medicine by the National Library of Congress and a rare disease hero by the FDA. She's got over 100 peer-reviewed publications. And just as impressive as that, today is her birthday.
Thank you very much. Well, I wanted to start by putting a couple of slides up showing one of the connections that I've had for many years with Justin. And the photos are taken by Warren Savory, who's also present. And for years, especially back when we were in the earlier location for the Insect Festival, we used to have a Stings and Things booth near the front door, and people would come in and see Justin and the rest of us sitting around with all kinds of scary looking critters and just taking away the scare factor from them. And Justin was always willing to sit back and let a young person, maybe a 10-year-old, enjoy the limelight, and he would teach the kids to be helpers at the booth. And he was so gentle, both with the humans and with the critters, that it was a highlight of my year to participate in these events. Now, my own work with Justin did include some science and research. We worked together on mostly case analyses, both human and animal, particularly involving massive bee stings by so-called Africanized honeybees. I decided that probably wasn't a good thing to present today. And the issue with being a physician is that a lot of the things that I have to talk about scientifically are a little bit disgusting and involve confidentiality with patients. And so rather than talk about that today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the same thing that I used to discuss at the Stings and Things booth. It was my job to talk about scorpion stings, and more specifically, scorpion antivenom, the antidote for the nerve poison that was injected by the stinger of the scorpion. So, antivenom for scorpion stings. This is going to be a historic talk. If I got into my own research too much, I would bore you and keep you here for an hour. But let's go back in time and let's think first of all about scorpions and their venom. Most species of scorpion are not dangerous to humans. And even our most dangerous kind of scorpion in Arizona, the bark scorpion, is not dangerous to most people most of the time. If you are an adult, if you're over 5 years old, basically, it might hurt a whole lot, but the chances of being killed by a scorpion are really, 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 really low. On the other hand, if you're a baby, a bark scorpion is a bad thing to be stung by. And once upon a time, long ago, in North America, if we count the United States and Mexico as the continent of North America, there were thousands of children per year used to die from scorpion sting. The nerve poisoning that they would get was a truly terrifying thing. Basically, all of your nerves would get stuck in the on position. So the ones that were responsible for flexing and moving muscles would cause you to thrash around. The nerves that went to your sweat glands or your salivary glands would cause you to sweat and drool. Basically, it was a terrifying, horrifying way to not breathe well. And so with that going on, it's been a concern to human beings living in North America for many years. Well, once upon a time in the 1920s, and this was following the Mexican Revolution, when a former resident of Durango that we knew as Pancho Villa had been involved in some activities near the city of Durango, there was a little bit of need for repair of the city, and there was a lot of construction going on in the perimeter and a lot of disrupted countryside. And there was what the local people termed a plague of scorpions. Many, many local children were stung over a period of several years, to the point that it was making the headlines not only in Mexico, but in the Los Angeles Times, in Miami, and across the United States. The two doctors whose photos you see there, Isauro Vensor and Carlos León de la Peña, were general practitioner pediatrician types who were working in Durango at this time. And they became inspired by something they'd read from Brazil, that it might be possible to make an antidote for scorpion sting and to save the lives of some of those children. The way to do it was to get as many scorpions as possible and extract the venom from their tails and make it into a sort of a vaccine to inject into horses. They called for the people of Durango to come forward. A bounty was placed on bark scorpions locally. Bring them to the church at the top of the hill. Any of you who've been to Durango know there's this huge hill with a great big church at the top, and people brought hundreds and thousands of scorpions up there and got a few centavos in payment for every one that they brought. They then needed a horse to inject. And it turned out that there was a local pharmacist, we'll call him, who is depicted right here, Don Isaias Rivera. He was a very well-known and respected man in town. He was known for riding his bicycle to deliver medicines to the people of Durango. And he had horses, and he lived just on the outskirts of Durango. So the doctors immunized one of Don Isaias's horses, and it gradually became immune to the effects of scorpion sting until their laboratory testing suggested that serum from that horse could be effective to neutralize the venom in a human that had been stung. And they started looking for volunteers who'd want to have horse serum injected into them. Nobody wanted to have Don Isaias's horse serum injected into them because it was well known that there were allergic reactions to serum, including to horses, and worse. And people said, no, no, thank you, no, thank you. Until one day at the Tres Rosas school, a little elementary school on the outskirts of town, where one of Don Isaias's 12 children was enrolled, and his little daughter was stung right there in front of the other children, right there in front of the other moms. And she was on the brink of death when Don Isaias said, well, I trust my horse's serum. And it was injected into the little girl, and she lived, and the word got out. It went the equivalent of viral in Durango in those days. And it ended up being manufactured first by the Mexican government and later by a company called MIN, for Monroy y Nájera, a husband and wife team that spun off a privatized company to make suero anti-alacrán MIN. Suero means serum, anti-alacrán means scorpion, and MIN for Monroy and Nájera. A few years later, a baby died in Phoenix. Specifically, this little baby died in the emergency room of St. Monica's Hospital, south of the railroad track in Jim Crow era Phoenix. St. Monica's was a hospital that had broken all kinds of boundaries, and it was run by a disobedient Roman Catholic priest by the name of Emmett McLaughlin. And Father Emmett had got himself into deep hot water with the Franciscan hierarchy in the couple of years prior to observing the death of this baby in his emergency room. During those couple of years, Father Emmett had begun to worry that his days as a priest were numbered because he was disagreeing with his superiors in so many issues. He disagreed with them about treating venereal disease in Black people. He disagreed with them about opening a training program for women of different nurses and cultural backgrounds. He sued the nursing board. He sued the nuns that were running it, which was very naughty for a priest to do, because he wanted certification for his Mexican, Japanese, Black, and Native American nursing students. And on the day that this baby died, thrashing and twitching and drooling and sweating of scorpion sting, there was an intern present, a new trainee out of Mexico who had come to the only residency program in Phoenix that would accept a Mexican citizen as a doctor. And this physician stepped forward and said, in my country, this baby would still be alive because we have an antivenom called MIN. Father Emmett said, bring me some. And the doctor said, I can't. You've got a law against bringing this kind of thing across the border, and it could jeopardize everything for me. So Father Emmett decided God was giving him a test. Was he going to obey the rules, or was he going to do what was right? So he started a smuggling ring. On the right, you see the young Father Emmett wearing his Franciscan monk's robe with its capacious sleeves big enough for stuffing dozens of vials of antivenom. And on the left, you see a woman that I don't have time to tell you about, but who later married the excommunicated priest at the end of the story. Meanwhile, a few miles north, Herbert Stanke, a former high school science teacher, was trying to invent scorpion antivenom at a place that would one day become Arizona State University. He was on the verge of success, but he couldn't get enough venom. He couldn't get enough scorpions, because whenever people put scorpions on trains to ship them to him, they died in the heat. He wanted airmail to carry the scorpions. For this, he needed a change in federal law. And for that, he needed lobbying and he needed public support. So he called a reporter. The reporter took a photo of him for the purpose of his publicity blurb that he was supposed to get the next morning in the Sunday paper. But what he didn't know was that the reporter had been keeping Father Emmett's secret for 2 years. The reporter knew about the smuggling. The reporter knew that St. Monica's Hospital had anti-venom already. So, with his arm twisted, his hand forced, the reporter ran that photo the next day, but with a different headline than Herbert Stanke had expected. Instead of saying, everybody lobby your congressman for a change in the mailing law, it said, priest turns smuggler to lick scorpions. Pious priest is smuggler. Taught saved as cleric shows wrong is right. There wasn't a single word about Herbert Stanke in there. And then it went really wild, and there were headlines across the country, and I don't have time to tell you about the many air flights that lifted this smuggled drug and flew it to Yuma in the middle of the night in the dark, landing without lights, the various crazy stunts that were pulled, but this smuggled drug and Arizona's mercy smugglers got all the publicity. It wasn't helpful to the man who was having trouble with his job with the superiors in the church. McLaughlin was forced out of the priesthood. He quit before they could fire him, basically. And you see McLaughlin in the bottom left there holding a box with a vial of anti-venom in it. And to his right, you see Monroy, the guy who was selling it in Mexico. The United States government put the pressure on the priest. Look, you either got to help Stanke make his own, or you got to convince the Mexicans to apply for a license. He convinced the Mexicans to apply for a license. He translated personally all of their documents from Spanish into English and submitted them to the FDA, which sent an inspector to Mexico and said that the company was worth it. Stanke also persevered. He eventually did succeed both at making an antivenom and at getting the law changed. You can find it today if you look up the rules for transporting venomous things in the mail. There's a special exception carved out for scorpions that are being used to make antivenom. He then made antivenom for close to 50 years. I used it in my training days until 1999, when the person who had taken over after Stanke's death, Marilyn Bloom, decided to retire. So for many, many years, he provided most of the antivenom. The Min product was withdrawn from the market in 1967. The lab at ASU quit making antivenom in 1999. My team went to Mexico that year and decided that we would work with with the company that had bought the Min company. And we helped them over a 12-year period to do clinical trials that met the criteria of the modern FDA before we realized that they actually owned the intellectual property for the old license. But that's another story that would take an hour to tell you. Today, every emergency room in Arizona is equipped to treat a scorpion sting, and there's no need for anyone in the United States or Mexico to die of scorpion sting if there is antivenom nearby. I'll leave you with another picture of Justin, one of my favorites. There he is with the vinegaroon at our Stings and Things booth a few years back. Thank you.
Also heard that the elderly may also be susceptible to some kind of injury from a sting. So can you talk about that?
Sure. Elderly are always susceptible to anything you want to name. And it's not because of having a unique physiologic difference. The way with a child, it's because you're just plain small, and the same dose of venom that goes in a baby, that goes in a big person, is concentrated more in the baby, so the baby suffers more. Babies also have different skin, and it's nice and pink, and it's full of blood vessels, and it picks up the venom faster. Elderly don't have that. And if a lot of old folks that are stung by a scorpion, my grandfather used to say, oh, I just flick them off now that I'm old. If you've got nice thick hide, it actually protects you a little bit. On the other hand, if you're elderly in the sense of teetering on the brink of the heart attack that's going to kill you, and that's the day the scorpion stings you. Scorpion venom makes your heart beat faster. It makes you get a little bit less oxygen in your lungs. And if your heart that's right on the brink of a heart attack, it gets a little bit less oxygen and has to work a little bit harder, it pushes you over the brink. And that's the moment you have your heart attack. Similarly, if you were on the brink of having a stroke and you have high blood pressure and you get pain, pain makes your blood pressure go even higher, and your blood pressure problem turns into a stroke. So yes, elderly are more vulnerable in that sense. But if you look at the data going back 150 years in Arizona, it's almost without exception, I know of one exception, children that have been killed by scorpions. And the one exception was a very, very rare situation where someone was allergic.
All right. I am using this because the Zoom people have to hear me, I guess. So is the bark scorpion the only medically significant scorpion we have? And is that the scorpion that the anti-venom is made from?
Yes. In the whole world, almost without exception, the scorpions that we worry about are in one family, the Buthidae. In North America, they're all within one genus, the Centroroides. In the United States, they're all within one species, Centroroides sculpturatus, the bark scorpion. We have dozens of other scorpions that are harmless. So it's really only the bark scorpion in Arizona that Americans have to worry about. In Mexico, there are several other species. They're all cousins of our bark scorpion.
Leslie, I might interrupt, just throw in a little anecdote.
Please.
Leslie, I worked on stings and things with Leslie and Justin.
He's the photographer here.
I think one of my favorite Justin stories is before I moved down to Tucson, I had worked for Food and Drug Administration up in San Francisco, which is partly that's why you know each other. And I had come down and Justin said, I have to have you over for dinner if you're in town. So we had a dinner, wonderful dinner at Justin Lee's house with mushu pork, I think it was. And Justin proudly showed us his backyard garden with native plants. Situated among the plants were several beehives. And I looked, knowing Justin, I said, Justin, are those Africanized? And before I could finish the question, we ran for the house and slammed the door closed. And on the way in, I got nailed by one of his Africanized bees.
Sorry.
This was very convenient because early in the day, before going over to his house for dinner, I was photographing a striped-tailed scorpion. And as Leslie said, we have over 60 species of scorpions in California. I mean, in Arizona, still a couple that need names. And 59 of those 60 are basically harmless. And when questioned about scorpion stings, because I pick them up by hand, the non-dangerous ones, I don't worry about the venom. And I get asked, how bad is the sting? Does it hurt? I have always said that a bee sting is worse than a scorpion sting. And by convenience, the striped-tailed scorpion I was shooting had stung me in the opposite index finger. They're going over Justin's. I now had empirical data. Left hand bee, right hand scorpion. The bee was worse.
Yeah, but that was a Vijovis.
Okay, next up we have Dr. Steve Buckman, who maybe everyone knows already. I don't know, he's worked at the Pollinator Paradise booth at this festival for many years. He's written many books. He's helped consulted on many different videos, especially those that celebrate native bees. His most recent book is actually called What a Bee Knows. And we're really lucky to have him here to talk about his adventures with Pogo Man. I do believe Pogo Man called Steve Buzzman.
Take this off. Okay. Yes, Justin for me was always Pogo Man, and he called me Buzzman. So here we go, out of the New York Times Magazine, Justin as the connoisseur of pain. Stung by dozens of different insects for his research, the entomologist Justin Schmidt has become an expert in physical agony. And Justin, I don't want to be morbid about this, but Justin has had some really incredible obituaries, and I encourage you to go read some of them and to rejoice in his energy and enthusiasm and not to be sad. But on the other hand, how many entomologists do you know who've had their obituaries in the New York Times? The one in the bottom for the entomologists in the crowd, Jim Kane and Teresa Singer and Stephen Bernal published one in the American Entomologist. Justin was a devoted husband and father. His wife, Lee, is here in the room, wife and mother. Children, Kaylin and Varus, now college students who are not here today. His children, Scott and Krista, from a previous marriage. All of them were insatiably curious and excited to go help Justin, like at their little ranchette sort of called the Hornet in Wilcox, and they would go help Justin collect vinegarines and other things like velvet ants. This is how I, either in the field or indoors, this is the way I like to remember Justin. Here he is peering into his stereo dissecting microscope, looking at some mutilid wasps. Justin started out in Wisconsin, a little bit north of me. I was born in Rockford, Illinois. Justin was born in Rhinelander, Wisconsin. His father, Orville, was a forester at Penn State University, and his mother was a home economist teaching that. And he had one brother and one sister. They are still living. Justin spent his formative years growing up in Boalsburg, Pennsylvania, and I can just imagine him crawling through the forest on his hands and knees, picking up ants and chasing lizards and snakes, kind of like a little Ed Wilson. And he, at this time, developed an insatiable urge to climb anything and everything. And many times I watched Justin climb up a tree, or my favorite, climbing up a, believe it or not, Cardone cactus. And if you don't know these cacti, these are much larger and stronger, muy fuerte, more so than a saguaro. So there's Justin smiling, sitting up on top of, I have to admit, a hacked off branch that probably blew off in a storm. But I saw him do this twice and I still can't believe it. And it's like, Justin would always wear these sandals or barefoot. So I can't really tell whether he's wearing sandals or barefoot there, but either way, I wouldn't have done it. Justin started out more of a chemist than an entomologist to start. So he took his bachelor's and master's in chemistry at Penn State and then UBC up in Canada, and then worked with this crazy guy, the late great Murray Sheldon Blum, chemical ecologist at the University of Georgia. So Justin's PhD dissertation, defensive strategies of wasps and ants. So he worked on Adazi mutilla and one of his all-time favorites, Pogonomyrmex batius. Later did some postdoctoral fellowships. He was an adjunct faculty member for many years in the Department of Entomology, Center for Insect Science, and at the Carl Hayden Bee Research Center, a USDA lab. He's also the founder and director of the Southwestern Biological Institute. So, when did the King of Sting arrive in Tucson? 1980. I think I don't know exactly, but I probably met Justin at a Pacific Branch ESA meeting in about 1978. I had started at the USDA lab in 79. So Justin and I overlapped for my entire career, and Justin was there for 4 or 5 years after me. Justin liked awarding nicknames, not in a bad, mean way like a former orangish president, but he gave me my lifelong moniker of Buzzman because, well, I enjoy studying buzz pollination, and his wife, Lee, was, of course, cute girl. Justin did not suffer fools lightly, especially USDA or certain university administrators. Our local Bruce Tabashnik was a notable exception. Justin really liked Bruce. And during my time at the Bee Lab, the three of us that ran around together getting into all sorts of mischief and trouble and publishing about 5 to 10 papers each per year, the three Beesketeers, Justin, the late Hayward Spangler, who was an incredible bioacoustics expert. Hayward worked with, in addition to bees and patenting his famous temper tester, he also worked with wax moths, which had ears. And Hayward had this giant tape recorder that weighed about 50 pounds called a rackle, and you could go up to about 300,000 cycles per second. So you could hear bat vocalizations or some of these other things. And he also discovered the first ear in the Coleoptera. Just a very few of the awards and honors about Justin. I attended the Living Tribute seminar to him at the ESA meeting in St. Louis in 2019. That was very special. Also, he was awarded something that very few entomologists are awarded. He became a fellow of the Entomological Society of America, and even better, won the Ig Nobel Prize for Physiology and Entomology in 2015. Here's Justin dressed for the occasion. Justin's wearing a wasp mask and looking very, very aposematic and dangerous. Justin penned 4 books. Sting of the Wild, he's most famous for, but he did an edited volume in '89 called The Special Biotic Relationships in the Arid Southwest, and with Dave Evans, Insect Defenses, Adaptive Mechanisms and Strategies of Prey and Predators. And then you can see in the middle there, we'd have to ask Lee later. I'm sure that Justin's Sting of the Wild has been translated into a number of languages, but I know for sure there's a Chinese language edition. Justin's published over 230 papers and kind of still counting. You know that you submit a paper and it gets revised, and sometimes it can take years to come out. So there are papers that Justin is a co-author on coming out this year and even next year. He had a far-flung cadre of friends and colleagues. These could be herpetologists or entomologists or immunologists, MDs. They were scattered all over the world. Some were lucky enough to be invited to his home, either in the Brickta house or the beautiful house on the hill, and Chef Justin would cook up his famous Peking duck, which took several days to prepare. And Lee would sing to the guests, and we'll be treated to a little bit of that later, I believe. A couple of titles from Justin's technical works. Again, most of the public knows him for, 1, 2, 3, 4 pain sting scale, but that is just the tip of the iceberg. So you can see him describing ponerotoxin from a tropical ant, a novel neurotoxin, clinical consequences, and that word toxinology. So the effect of natural toxins on other life. Whoa, Renaissance man for sure. We've seen his interest in vinegaroons, also amblypygids, and giant red velvet mites. Kissing bugs, he was working on kissing bugs with local MDs in Tucson. And of course, he was paid at the US Department of Agriculture to work on Africanized bees and to develop artificial bee diets, some nutrition, which is kind of what I got into the act with Justin working on. He patented and developed the pulp paper swarm trap, which is still in use all over the country, a monitoring device with Dr. Steve Tanis, his former technician, and my former PhD student, along with Robert Smith of the Ant Department. So Justin was really into nutritional ecology for bees. What types of pollens were the most attractive, the most nutritious? Some of them were even poisonous, and obviously venom biochemistry. Justin and Lee loved to travel the world, but really, I think in my heart, he loved the Sonoran Desert best because of all the cool animals and plants here that can stab, bite, or sting you. And he never wanted to say something about bee or wasp biting you to Justin, and he would very patiently correct you and say, no, it's the other end that you have to worry about. Justin published a paper about red velvet mites, and this is something like Dan Jansen, the tropical biologist, would do. So Justin wasn't satisfied to look at them and say, oh, they must be bad. No, he tasted them, and they were very bad. They were nasty and extremely bitter, and he spit them out. Justin also observed kingbirds out his study and found out that they were selectively preying on the drones, so they weren't getting stung. Adventures with Justin and Benny. Justin and I almost died once in Sonora driving in Benny at night and in a big storm. And the Mexicans used those like cannonball sort of flaming things. Well, the storm had blown them out and we didn't realize that the road was ending very fast. I heard, oh, expletive from the front, and I went from the back to the front. Justin put on the binders and we came off about a 2-foot embankment and fortunately landed in a giant pile of sand. But we spent the next morning bending the kinks out of the tie rod and limping into the next town. Once somewhere in the Barry Goldwater bombing range, Justin announced that he was going to fix dinner. Well, about 10 minutes later, I hear pop, 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 and Justin comes beaming back to the camp with a scrawny jackrabbit by the ears, which he promised, which he then skinned and served to us. It was not good. Another time, Justin was with Steve Tanis at the Owl's Head Buttes looking for Africanized bees. Justin, free climbing without ropes or any measure of safety. He and Steve were up there, and Justin grabs onto this huge slab of rock. Long story short, the rock gives loose. Justin and the rock go tumbling down about 100 feet, leaving a path of death, dust, and destruction. Steve Tanis zooms down after Justin, picks him up by his backpack, and Justin moans, I'm still alive. Another time, Justin and I did a paper on, we wanted to find out how good bees, honeybees were at metabolizing their food, especially the nitrogen in pollen, turning nitrogen in the food into bee nitrogen. And we put this chromium oxide marker into the diet. You can see the white box there, which is the bee house, a little tube going into this defecation chamber, and then we would crawl inside the chamber and laboriously scoop off all the bee poop and then weigh it and analyze it. Long story short, we found that honeybees could use this very efficiently, about 72%, much, much higher than people, grasshoppers, or cattle. I think some of the only arthropods that have higher digestive efficiency are Gillian spiders. Justin and I also appeared in National Geographic magazine, at least Justin did, in a photo. This was not high tech. We had a 12-foot metal pole that was very heavy. We spent about $10 going to the hardware store and put an RV mirror on it. And then we would take turns holding and balancing this cumbersome thing. And the other person would look at the flowers on the saguaro with binoculars. And then we would record for 30 plants, every flower that bloomed every night. This was great fun. Of course, today, I would use my Mavic Pro drone to do it, and it would sound like a bee, and it would be a lot more fun than holding that heavy pole. But driving the Aculeus home, you know, I always noticed standing back that Justin would hop around excitedly and try not to get stung, mostly. But if there was an especially valuable data point, it's surprising just how clumsy he could be. Justin, for a lot of his research, calculated what is called the LD50. I won't go into it, but it's the single dose and the concentration to kill half of the population. I did not put on this slide, but Justin was the first person to calculate the LD50 for honeybee venom, and it's about 9 stings per kilogram of body weight. Justin would spend hours and hours, days, in fact, collecting the bees, ants, and wasps out in the field, bringing them into the house, chilling them or keeping a culture of them, and then under the microscope would dissect them and pull out these really tiny transparent venom reservoirs. And then with a hypodermic needle or capillary pipette, however he was doing it, he would collect the venom. He would pool all this stuff together from hundreds or literally thousands of insects, and then freeze dry it. And then he could later reconstitute the venom for mouse injections or to do biochemistry on them. Schmidt pain scale, it's been mentioned. I'll just mention a couple things. It goes from 1 to 4. A puny little sweat bee, Justin's words, light, ephemeral, almost fruity. A tiny spark has singed a single hair on your arm. Bullet ant or tarantula hawk, watch out. Pure, intense, brilliant pain, like walking over flaming charcoal with a 3-inch nail in your heel. Obviously, Justin didn't do that, but he had this very colorful prose where he was pretty much like the Marquis de Sade of pain. So I will end there and be glad to take a few questions.
Hi, Steve. You might
Hello.
recognize me, but thank you for bringing up some of the wonderful memories I had with my dad, especially with going camping with him and Benny and all the trips we did with him.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't see you back there. Don't know who's in the audience. Hello. Justin, friends, family, friends.
So this is more of a personal question. So what are you going to miss about him most?
I'm sorry, what was that?
What will you miss about him most?
I think his insatiable curiosity, and he would always hear me out on my wacky ideas. And even though we didn't do a lot of buzz pollination stuff together, we would be out either camping or in the lab at the bee lab or later at his house and just looking at stuff under the microscope and just sharing ideas. So he was an incredible sounding board for my wacky stuff. And I think I miss that the most. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so next up is Jillian Cowles. She's been living here in Southern Arizona for the last 47 years. She's worked as a clinical microbiologist at the University Medical Center. She's now retired, so she can spend full time on her true passion, which is photographing and studying plants, arthropods, fungi, slime molds, just you name it, she'll photograph it if it's really cool and small. She is the author of Amazing Arachnids, which if you haven't seen is filled with her amazing photographs, highly recommended. And her photographs have also appeared in many other books, including Justin's own Sting of the Wild. Jillian.
Okay, thank you. And the first thing I want to mention is that we're going to be doing a very quick gallop through a whole sample of projects that Justin and I worked on. We'll have just a little nibble of each of these little treats. So let's start with the Pepsis wasp. And these have aposematic coloration, which generally is a combination of black, orange, yellow, or sometimes all black, believe it or not. But this one happens to be orange and iridescent blue. And Justin wrote this wonderful paper that was published back in 2004 called The Venom and the Good Life in Tarantula Hawks: How to Eat, Not Be Eaten, and Live Long. And the first paragraph of this paper, after the abstract, that is dedicated to Howard Evans, who wrote Wasp Farm, Life on a Little Known Planet, and some other books concerning wasps. And Wasp Farm inspired Justin to dedicate his life to studying stinging insects. So you can think of Justin as having picked up the baton from Howard Evans and carrying it to the next part of the race. And in his paper, he talks about the aposematic coloration, which other insects evolved similar coloration in an example of Batesian mimicry. For example, here's your wasp, which could deliver a very painful sting. And here's a mimic, which is an acylid, which we saw up on Mount Lemmon last summer, which is a very convincing mimic of that wasp. And in addition, you have Mullerian mimics, which also have painful stings and deploy combinations of aposematic colors, such as the orange and black. Now, one of the things that's interesting about these solitary wasps, like the Pepsis wasp, is that although the sting is very, very painful to mammals, it has low toxicity. This is in stark contrast to our wonderful little honeybees, which actually have quite a lot of toxicity associated with their venom. And Justin liked to put this as truth in advertising, that the advertising is pain from the sting, which makes you feel that there is damage being done to you. But the truth in the advertising is actually the toxicity in the venom, which the honeybee requires more truth in its advertising because it's defending an entire hive with pupa and all of its relatives, including the queen. So it has to put some truth in its advertising. So it's a much more toxic sting, although it doesn't hurt as much as the Pepsis wasp. Let's talk about another solitary wasp, velvet ant. These mutilids are a kind of a wasp, and the female, this is a female of this species Dasymatilla asteria. The males look entirely different. They have wings, different coloration, and so on. And I'm just going to do a quick gallop through some of the mutilids, but this is a fairly typical mutilid life history. Dasymatilla foxi is searches on the ground for the nests of the ground nesting Diadasia cactus bees. These bees collect the pollen of cholla and prickly pear, and they provision their underground nests with that pollen, which their larvae feed on. Now, what Dasymatilla foxi searches for is a nest in which the larva has actually completed its growth and has stopped feeding and or an early stage pupa. At that, if the Dasymatilla finds one of those nests, it will lay its egg on that late stage larva or early stage pupa. And what will emerge from that nest is, instead of a Diadasia bee, it will be a wasp, this little velvet wasp. And over time,
these wasps actually will lose their hair if something doesn't kill them first. They're extremely durable. And you can see that they actually have sort of a tough, hard outer coating, which the exoskeleton is very tough. That's one of the things that Justin pointed out in this paper, The Paradox of the Velvet Ant, where he attributes the long life of these velvet ants, which can be as much as 18 months, to their powerful sting, a hard exoskeleton, the ability to stridulate to startle a predator, and also they can emit noxious chemicals from their mandibular glands. So I'm going to gallop through these very rapidly. These were some of the mutilids I photographed for Justin. My part in Pepsis wasps and mutilids is that I photographed them and I got to babysit some of them. When Justin went out of the country for a little while, I babysat all of his wasps and mutilids, and I don't think you'll find too many people with a babysitter of Pepsis wasps on their resume. But we have a lot of beautiful variety of mutilids. Some of them are quite tiny, some of them are quite large. This is not even the tiniest and the largest ones, but we have a vast variety of them. Whoops, sorry about that. And one thing to mention is that in many of these mutilids, we don't yet know what the host is. So especially some of the really tiny ones, like this one, Pseudomythoca quadrinatoda. I doubt seriously that anyone knows what the hosts are on that thing. This is a nocturnal one. Okay, let's move on to kissing bugs. So kissing bugs, we have 3 species in the Tucson area. Triatoma rubida makes up about 90% of our kissing bugs out where I live in the Vail, Arizona area, but it might vary a little bit. Triatoma protracta is about 5% where I live, and Triatoma recurva is another roughly 5%. And Justin and Dr. Stephen Klotz studied kissing bugs, their feeding patterns, their dispersal patterns, and Justin wanted a photo of a kissing bug. So this is Justin's finger and the kissing bug attempting to penetrate his finger with its rostrum. And I love this photo because this kissing bug, you can almost hear it groaning as it's leaning in and trying to get through his finger. But Justin was really smart. He presented the finger print part of his finger, which actually is fairly tough skin, and the kissing bug was not able to get through. So, so I did not babysit his kissing bugs. I draw the line. And so he and Dr. Klotz came out with a couple of nice papers. This was one of them, seasonal flight pattern of the kissing bugs, Triatoma rubida and Triatoma protracta in Southern Arizona, United States. Okay, let's move on to one of the far better arthropods, in my opinion, the vinegaroon. And in the last couple of years of his life, Justin published a couple of papers. This one I'm a co-author on, Reproduction and Life History of the Vinegaroon Mastigoproctus tohono. And Justin observed vinegaroon courtship and mating a lot of times. So they start out their courtship with a male and female doing a dance that can last as much as 4 or 5 hours. After that, the male generates a spermatophore and the female stands behind the male waiting for him to generate the spermatophore, which she then picks up with their gonopore. And that generation of the spermatophore can take about 3 hours. And then the male turns around and embraces the female, and he helps push the contents of the spermatophore into the female until you finally have an empty spermatophore. And that process can take several more hours. The entire courtship and mating of a vinegaroon pair takes an average of 13 plus hours. And Justin observed this for, I believe, 50 some times, if I remember correctly, which really is incredible dedication considering that it's an all-night affair and then some. In the fall, the female vinegaroon digs a maternity burrow. She seals herself in there. She lays eggs in the spring, which she holds in a belly bag while she incubates them. When the eggs hatch, the larvae climb up onto her back, where they undergo further development for approximately 5 weeks while they're living off just fat stores in their bodies. And at the end of 5 weeks, they molt into first instar protonymphs. So the protonymphs, when they're first molted, are very pale like this as they drop down from the female vinegaroon. And then over time, they turn darker and their pedipalps turn red. The female vinegaroon at that point starts exiting the burrow, hunting for food. In this case, a female had brought down prey for her babies, which she shared. And even when they exit the burrow, the vinegaroon shares food with the babies. Sometimes the babies swarm around the mother, begging for food and tearing off little bits of food. And this extended maternal care of young can continue into November, at least with captive ones, which is really quite extraordinary. That's 4 months that the female was sharing food. So Justin studied the different instars and how they grew and matured. And I studied the extended maternal care of young and the underground stuff with vinegaroons. Once a baby's molt to a second instar nymph, they are no longer fed by the mother. Now, one of the things that we did was try to photograph a vinegaroon sprain. Justin made this paper that changed color from blue to yellow when it was exposed to the acetic acid in the vinegaroon spray. But Bruce Taubert one day asked me, hey, is there something that you'd really like to photograph among arthropods? And I said, yeah, a vinegaroon sprain. So Justin supplied the vinegaroons and Bruce and I worked on getting the photos. This was one of the photos that we got, which is really incredible. And then Bruce got this photo, that's my hands harassing that poor little vinegaroon. But this photo actually made it to the cover of the Journal of Arachnology. So it was one of the last articles that Justin and I published. Well, Justin published this one, but the cover photo was Bruce and my efforts. So vinegaroons in a multi-predator, multi-prey system, prey, predators, and cannibalism. And last but not least are the giant desert velvet mites, Dinothrombium magnificum. They come in 2 color morphs, either all red or red and white. He wrote this paper. This was probably the last one that he published before he died anyway, which was Big Bad and Red Giant Velvet Mite Defenses and Life Strategies. And what Justin studied was what ate the mites, and what I studied is what do the mites feed on. So this also made the cover of a Journal of Arachnology. So I found that termites were the only things that these velvet mites actually ate, but not even the worker termites. The worker termites immediately attacked the velvet mites and would bite them and would draw blood, and the velvet mites would try to get away. And sometimes they would even kill the worker termite, but they would never ever feed on a worker termite. However, when faced with alate termites, they readily killed and drained out those alate termites, those reproductives. And they sometimes lie on their back as they were sucking out the contents of a termite. And here's 2 termites that have been drained out. And they would actually be able to drain out 4 at a sitting. And they go from like a little empty pillowcase to looking like a fat little pillow at the end of that. So one of the things I wanted to bring up at the very end here is the idea that Justin and I had a lot of curiosity about things. We worked on projects. Justin picked up the baton from Howard Evans, and there are many questions still left to solve and many puzzles. For example, did those red velvet mites synchronize their emergence purely to get those emerging alate termites, or partly in parallel with the blooming of the queen of the night, where reproduction is facilitated if everything is synchronized? You know, perhaps our red velvet mites mate and, you know, court and mate when they first emerge. Nobody's ever recorded that. Never, as far as I know. And what are the hosts for all those other mutilids? So maybe someone among you will pick up the baton and run with it and solve some of these little mysteries. That's it.
You have time for questions?
Oh wow. So when you take these photos, aside from like in their natural state, is there a specific way that you do it? Because it looks like a kitchen counter almost with the marble. Like, do you set up a specific place where you want to take the photos of the insects and stuff?
I'm not sure I heard all of the question, but a lot of the photos I take are in situ, especially of native bees, but some of them are in a studio setup. For example, the underground stuff for the vinegaroons, I did a cutaway burrow so that I could see into their burrow. I'd peel away the front of I had a construction paper across the front that I could peel away and check on them with a red light at night and see what was going on. But I keep my laundry counter, folding counter is my studio for photography. I mean, nice thing about macro photography is you can do a set in a very small amount of space. So.
Ooh, thank you.
How similar are whip scorpions and vinegaroons? Sorry, what's the difference between a whip scorpion and a vinegaroon?
Okay. Well, here's the problem with common names. Whip scorpions. I've heard that apply to an amblypygid. I've heard that apply to all kinds of things. An amblypygid is a different order than the vinegaroon, which is a europygid. So I'm assuming that whip scorpion, you're meaning an amblypygid, but yeah, that's what I would assume anyway. They're two orders of arachnids, different orders. Yeah.
Actually, my understanding is whip scorpion equals to vinegaroon. That's at least what I've been living with him for so many years. That's told. So here's the answer.
I just wanted to ask, are there any like things or arthropods you don't think will really ever have pictures or videos taken of them?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
Are there things that need pictures taken of them? Things that haven't been photographed? Insects or other arthropods that need photographs?
Oh, there's lots. Geez, when I photograph things, I can't tell you how many times people tell me, oh, that's the first time that's ever been photographed of a live one. There's lots of stuff out there that has never been photographed before. And I strongly suggest that people contribute to Bug Guide and iNaturalist, because these are wonderful ways of contributing to the knowledge out there. There's over there.
Thank you for the presentation. That moment with the wasp, and the bee, can you go more in details? How I was supposed to understand? Is that a form of evolution? What was that phenomenon? And are there other examples of that in nature, in the insect world?
Yeah, the truth in advertising idea that Justin brings out in his book, Sting of the Wild, that's a good place to read in more depth about that. But the idea that there is toxicity associated with the venom of social Hymenoptera, as opposed to relatively harmless venom that is nevertheless very painful in the solitary wasps. So it's basically an evolutionary adaptation to have some toxicity in the venom.
Pardon me, let me clarify. I guess I was thinking about the one with the wasp finds the bee's larva. And
I'm really sorry about that. Yeah, so you were talking about the Dasymatilla finding the larva of, the Dasymatilla finding the larva of the Diadasia bee. Yeah, so that's actually among wasps. Being a hyperparasitoid or a parasitoid of another hymenopteron is very common. There's many wasps that are either parasitoids of another hymenopteron or can be a hyperparasitoid of another hymenopteron. So that's a fairly common strategy actually among the hymenoptera. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so I think you have a very good idea of the community of scientists and students that Justin has inspired, and they've had such a good time working with him. And now we're going to bring on Frank Hale, who is a doctor who is a family friend of Justin's. So a bit more of an intimate story. And Frank is a retired professor from the UA College of Medicine. He first met Lee and Justin when Lee was a resident in the Department of Family and Community Medicine. And later, Lee and Frank were colleagues at El Pueblo Health Center, which is now the clinical site of El Rio Community Health Center. Their families enjoyed many adventures in the wilderness of Arizona over the years. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Frank Hale, who I've just recently had the pleasure to meet.
Good afternoon. Oh, yes, good afternoon. Yeah, I'm in a little different environment than I'm used to. I have to give you a heads up. Since, as Wendy mentioned, my career has been in the field of medicine. If you should happen to hear the word epidemiology come out of me, it's really meant to be entomology. They're very close. But Justin was a really good friend, and I was very honored to be invited to participate in this symposium. Perhaps you can tell by the book cover, it's a bit of a memorial to Justin, who would use locally available parts and equipment to keep things as simple as possible. So that's what my title page was designed to represent. But it's true that over the years, our families enjoyed many trips into remote parts of the Arizona wilderness. Is it the right or the left? There we go. Okay. And the truth is, though, Justin was never really off duty in any of our adventures. And his career as an entomologist and naturalist was also his passion. And he loved to share his enthusiasms for the natural world with others. So that meant that our times together were always delightful learning experiences. But you're not going to get many more slides like this, because I won't be speaking about these wonderful places we visited. You have to go and find them yourselves. What I do want to do is share 4 memories out of many, which for me exemplify the special legacy of a very remarkable man. This picture was actually taken in January. And it recalls our Rim to Rim adventure in 2008. The rim, if you hike the Grand Canyon rim to rim, you have a descent of 5,500 feet. You cross the Colorado River and you climb back up another 4,200 feet. And it's a hiking distance of 24 miles. And you really have to do it in one day to avoid obtaining the required backcountry camping permit. Our group started in the night and finished with the last fading sunlight. And I'll say one of our party of 8 one guy twisted his ankle and they made it through. My particular memory of that day is seeing 2 full moons. Justin, as Buzzman mentioned, did the hike in open-toed sandals. Not surprisingly, they had to be repaired halfway out climbing up the south rim. Justin always wore sandals. Simple, practical, comfortable footwear. Thus, for me, his sandals symbolize the way the king chose to live his life as a practical minimalist. Now, Buzzman has mentioned Benny, and no symposium like this would be complete without mentioning Benny. Here is Benny, deep in the Kaibab National Forest, near the end of the Arizona Trail on the Utah border. Benny was stashed at this spot, which would be the return destination for Justin and his 3 sons. So we dropped them off near the north rim of the Grand Canyon, about 4 days hike back. Now, here's the thing about Benny that Buzzman alluded to, but I have a little more detail on. Very effective off-road vehicle, even intentionally. His get-homing gear included a jack, a hand tire pump, a 2x4 stud, a short-handled shovel, and just in case Benny got stuck in the sand, 2 wool remnant rugs. This easy-to-maintain practical equipment provides more evidence of Justin's pragmatic philosophy, and I'm sure it appeared in the academic pursuits that he showed as well. Anyway, this memory inspires me to never go off-road without this kind of equipment in my outback. A third memory is of a family camping and hiking experience in Organ Pipe National Monument. And of a particular incident. We were hiking on the Victoria Mine Trail, and we met a couple who had just seen a rattlesnake in the path. So we proceeded up the trail cautiously, but we didn't find the creature. But Justin surmised it could be napping under an ironwood tree about 25 feet off the trail. And so he led us to that spot. And there it was. Justin was definitely not off duty that day. On that same trip, he introduced us to the rare Ajo lily, which inhabits the hottest, driest regions of the Southwest and which only flowers after the infrequent rainstorms. We also learned that its bulbs are edible and have a taste similar to garlic. And we befriended this guy and numerous other insects on this trip. My fourth and most recent memory comes from when we visited the Ramsey Canyon Nature Preserve. At the end of a short walk, Lee and Justin invited us to join them on a visit to Patrick Sullivan's research lab, not far from the Reserve Visitors Center. Patrick is a retired entomologist from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and like Justin, a fellow traveler with the Department of Entomology. He also manages an impressive laboratory and specimen collection in his home, just like Justin did. Pat greeted us warmly, and I would soon observe the two veteran entomologists intently comparing notes and discussing experiences and sharing and great fellowship. Both maintained their lifelong curiosity about the wonders of the insect world. As I saw them happily conversing, for me, it provided a genuine field experience that peer recognition and college support, collegial support, which is the most precious currency in academia. These are embedded in the DNA of entomologists. Knowing something of Justin's networking skills and his extensive travels around the world, I'm confident that the collegial interaction that I witnessed was not unique. Okay, as I think about these four memories, I conclude that the Schmidt pain scale for stinging insects really exemplifies some of the special attributes of Justin's well-lived life. First is Justin's practical approach to the natural universe, which is demonstrated by his skill in making the complexities of the stinging insect world more understandable and hopefully less threatening to all of us. Second is his oneness with the natural world and passion for sharing its mysteries and miracles by teaching and mentoring others. Third, his accomplishments remind us that the no-nonsense, unpretentious, dare-to-be-different lifestyle is alive and well. And last, that entomologists are fundamentally good human optimists. So thank you so much for enriching our lives. Dr. Justin O. Schmidt. You probably note that I have some emotion in delivering this, but he was a good friend and a valued person. I doubt you will have many questions, but if you have any, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions for Frank? Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, now we're in for a special treat. We're going to invite Lee Schmidt up to give us a serenade, I believe. Leslie's still here? No, she's not. She left. Looks like she might have left.
Oh, Leslie left. Okay, so then we're gonna save that for the future. So Justin's above the sky, and he didn't know I can sing when we met. And so I want to dedicate the song because I know he has been enjoying all of you. Thank you so much. It basically says when the flower blooms, bee comes. Flower and the bees are inseparable. Bees are born for the flowers and flowers just for the bees. Flowers, 鲜花, fresh flowers, 鲜花, honeybee, 蜜蜂. So it sounds like this. Everybody. 鲜花开放，蜜蜂来，滋滋。鲜花蜜蜂分不开，蜜蜂生来就恋鲜花，鲜花围着蜜蜂开。Thank you all. Thank you.
And we.
So sweet. Thank you. Thank you all. That is so sweet. You see.
Okay, so we have one more treat for you, and then we are going to mingle and reminisce together. So I don't know how many of you in here had never met Justin. Some of you never met him. So we want to give you the opportunity.
Please welcome Dr. Justin Schmidt. Well, thanks for being here. I see you got a bug on your shirt. Do you love bugs? You love
Who doesn't? Doesn't everybody love bugs? We're going to make you a fine entomologist by the time we're done.
By the way, I'm scared when we have like big animals, but I'm not that scared of bugs. I don't know why. I'm just not.
You're already an entomologist, just like me. I'm afraid of horses.
You are. Why?
They're big. Have you ever seen the teeth on a horse?
Yeah, they do have bigger teeth than your typical insect,
That's for sure. They bite a lot harder too.
Can I ask you a quick question before we get started? A personal question. I don't know what it is, but I get bitten by mosquitoes more than if I'm in a group. I'll get 10 times the amount of mosquito bites as anybody else. Why is that?
You're a hot-blooded American.
Yes.
They like people that are hot, particularly women.
Really?
Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe you're attractive.
These are horny little mosquitoes.
Exactly.
I'm only attracted to mosquitoes, though, unfortunately.
Uh-oh.
You've been stung by how many insects exactly?
Oh, I don't know. Probably about 83 plus or minus a few here and there.
83.
And ran out of fingers and toes, so I can't keep acting.
What part of your body do you let them sting?
Oh, I don't like to let them sting any part of my body. They sting wherever they choose.
I see.
If I'd rather have my choices, I'd like them to sting me in the arm or the leg, not my nose or my lip or my eye.
Has it happened that they've stung your nose, lip, or eyes?
Oh, yes. Then you end up with a fat lip. You come, oh, I can't speak right now because my lip's very big and fat.
Are these controlled experiments, or are you just out in the wild and you get stung and then you write the experience down?
Yeah, it's pretty much in the wild. I think the only control is the wasp or the ant.
I see.
Not me. I'm not in control usually.
I see. So
I'm just there trying to do my thing.
You made a chart which is it's named after you. It's called the Schmidt Pain Index. And who uses this chart? How would this come in handy? What practical use would there be?
Oh, there's lots of practical use for educators to teach the children about the beauty of nature. It's really good for medical things, so we can figure out, oh boy, this really hurts. Can we use this for stopping the pain?
Mm-hmm. So the honeybee, is the sweat bee the honeybee? Is that the same thing, or are they different?
No, a sweat bee is a little tiny grayish bee.
Okay.
And this one feels like kind of a spark that you're walking along the carpet and you touch your finger to the light switch. get a little bit of a spark. It doesn't hurt very much. It's just enough, get your attention.
It just
Now the
goes up.
honeybee,
Mhm.
now the honeybee, that's a 2. The sweat bee is a 1.
How many are there? 1 through what?
1 through 4.
1 through 4.
And the 2 is the anchor. That's the honeybee.
Some of these other insects, the bullhorn acacia ant, it feels like someone fired a staple into your cheek or hand.
Exactly.
Have you had a staple fired into your cheek or hand?
I've had one once. I had my hand underneath the stapler and whacked them, and it kind of got me that impression.
A yellow jacket feels like extinguishing a cigar on your tongue. Now, you definitely haven't had that.
No, I hope not.
But so how do you know it feels like that?
Well, you don't, but you kind of imagine that if that's what it was, that's good enough.
Then you just imagine by the way, I was attacked by a swarm of yellow jackets.
Yeah, I heard.
When I was a kid, I was about 8 years old in Brooklyn. I jumped over a fence to get something. And my sister had both of us, and we landed on an old steak, an old piece of meat somebody thrown in the yard. And I was swarmed. They chased me all the way down the block.
You were trying to steal their dinner was the problem.
That's right. And I got stung 11 times. My Uncle Tony went out in the backyard and started bringing dirt up to the bathtub, and they filled the bathtub with mud and was that a good thing to do?
Sure, that works.
It does.
Oh, by the way, you got a sting rather than a 2, which is 1 yellow jacket. That makes it a 3 because the difference between a 1 and a 2 is 10.
I see. All right. So we have some bugs here. Let's go through we have this little box of dead bugs. Should we bring out the live bugs instead? I think the live bugs are more interesting. Yeah, let's get the live bugs. Do you have those over there? Yeah. Alec, did you want to be a part of that? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Very good.
So what we have here these are harvester ants.
Right.
And as you kind of notice, there's red ones and there's black ones.
Yes,
so
I do.
2 different kinds of harvester ants. Which one do you think hurts more?
Well, I don't want to sound racist, so I'll say red.
Ah, very good. You got the correct answer.
That's correct. Yeah, I would be more scared of the red ones, but they both hurt.
Oh, yes. The difference is the black ones only hurt for 4 hours.
Okay.
So if you kind of imagine you get stung, kind of imagine somebody taking some needle nose pliers and digging underneath your skin, kind of grabbing tendons and nerves and kind of ripping at them for about 4 hours. That's the black one. That's the milder one. So that's why it's a 3. Now the red one, so you see if you get the red one, then that goes on for 8 hours. You get the extra bonus, no extra charge.
I see. Did you bring these on the plane from Tucson?
Oh, yeah, of course.
You did?
I can't bicycle fast enough to get to Tucson here in that time.
And did you check these, or how does that work?
I just said I'm with Insect Zoo coming on Jimmy Kimmel's show. And so everybody says, wow, of course that's legitimate.
Yeah. All right. Let's see what else you got over there.
These are some of my favorites.
What are these?
These we call the Jesus Christ wasps. And you say,
when people see them, they go, Jesus Christ.
Well, that's one reason. And they'll feel it if they get stung. The other reason is they're like a helicopter. They land in the middle of water. They go, land, tank up with their water, off
just
they
like
go.
Jesus used to.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's a lot safer than being on the edge. There's all kinds of things that are going to eat you on the edge.
All right, I'll put them over here with the ants. These aren't going to get out, are they?
Well, we can open the jar.
No, let's not.
Doesn't the audience want to see them up?
I don't think they do.
They fly really well.
I'm sure they're great. Yeah, we'll take your word for that. What else do you have here?
So now these guys, in contrast to the other ones,
you've been stung by this.
Unfortunately, yes.
Oh boy.
Would you like to take a
no?
Sure.
Yeah, no. Yeah. No, I don't.
Look at how beautiful they are.
What if they fly out?
Oh, these aren't very acrobatic.
Okay.
Famous last words. That one, they'll get out.
Yeah, I bet they will.
You could stick your hand in and pet them if you want to.
No.
No.
Yeah, I'll just go ahead. Why don't we slide those over there? And what are these, you say?
These are called tarantula hawks. They eat tarantula.
Oh, wow. Oh, good. Good job, guys.
But then again, a tarantula is a much better pet than this one is.
Oh, it is?
Tarantula won't bite.
Bad job, guys.
Oh, they're gals, by the way.
Oh, they
all the bad ones are the gals.
Now I've insulted them.
Guys are nice, sweet, lovable characters.
You have one more there for us? And this is the one that Alec freaked out about.
Yes, this is a vinegaroon.
A vinegaroon.
And we'll
Why they
put
call it vinegaroon?
Well, they spray vinegar. Your favorite vinaigrette salad dressing, you know, you have in your salad.
Yeah.
These kind of smell a little bit like that, and so you say, "Oh, yum, want to eat them."
And is it going to spray me if I hold it?
Probably not. Here, why don't we get on? No idea. Put it on my.
Which side do they spray from?
Well, you're looking at the business end right there. So you better be in good behavior, or else.
Oh,
she's gonna
don't
let
worry,
you
I'm
know
not
that
going
she
to
said-
move a millimeter.
See, you're already getting converted. We'll make you
Yeah.
an entomologist
Well,
soon.
yeah, I doubt it, but thank you very much, Doctor. That's Dr. Justin Schmidt. He's here from Tucson. It's called the sting of the wild. They do smell like vinegar. We'll be right back. These are from Tame and Pula.
So now you know, if you didn't know before, why we are so fond of him. And we'll miss him so much. So thanks so much for being here to share with us in our tribute to Justin Schmidt. And please hang around and mingle, and especially thanks to all the speakers. Yes, thank you.